They say land is the one thing they're not making more of. My grandfather must have known that when he bought 12 acres just outside the city limits in the 1970s, back when it was all dirt roads and cows, not Teslas and tough grass. I inherited it last year, shortly after he passed. He left me the deed, a letter warning me never to trust anyone from a homeowners association, and a coffee tin filled with old maps and receipts. This land stays in the family, he wrote, unless they try something. If they do, bury them with it. I thought he was being dramatic. Then the bulldozers came. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me rewind. The land was oddly shaped, long and narrow, like someone sliced a pie and gave us the crust. It bordered Greenbrier Summit, a high-end HOA community that had exploded over the past decade. Stucco castles, 3-car garages, and sprinklers that ran even during rainstorms. You know the type. At first, we coexisted peacefully. My land wasn't part of the HOA, and I liked it that way. No fees. No neighbor reports. No one telling me my grass was an inch too long. I didn't live there full time, just rented parts of it for parking and storage, and kept the rest wild. Until one spring morning, I drove out to check on things and noticed something off. There was a freshly paved cart path cutting across the edge of my property. At first, I thought maybe the county had reworked the drainage. Then I saw the signs, future site of Greenbrier Golf and Racquet Club, private property. I stared at that sign a long time. Not next to my land. Not near my land. On my land. At first, I assumed it was a mistake. Maybe the developer had misread a boundary line. Maybe some over-enthusiastic contractor went rogue. I wasn't about to panic over a bit of encroachment. I'd seen zoning disputes before, usually settled with some flagging tape and mild cursing. But then the earth movers came, and the fencing crews, and the HOA reps, 3 of them, who showed up in my driveway with brochures, wearing identical blazers like they were selling condos in hell. Mr. King, one asked, though she pronounced it like peasant. Yes. We're so thrilled to see this land finally put to proper use. I'm sorry, finally. She smiled like she was trying to sell me vitamins. The community has been working toward this recreational vision for years. We're just delighted it's coming together. I glanced over at the corner where a putting green was already halfway installed. Funny, I said. I don't remember selling it. Her smile didn't even flicker. Well, technically, you didn't. But Greenbrier's charter grants us development rights over adjacent and used parcels under the Civic Beautification Clause. It's quite standard. Standard, I repeated deadpan. Yes. And completely unenforceable. Now she blinked. I held up my phone. Would you like me to read you my grandfather's deed? It's actually fun bedtime reading. Especially the part where he personally paid to have the land declared unincorporated, exempt from municipal zoning, HOA annexation, or what I assume is recreational imperialism. Her smile snapped in half. I see, she said flatly. I don't think you do, I said. But you will. That night, I pulled out the coffee tin. And that's when I realized they hadn't just accidentally paved over the line. They'd stolen nearly 5 acres. I wasn't angry. I was interested. I spent the next 3 days playing real-life Minesweeper through legal records, survey maps, and every clause in my grandfather's will. Turned out the old man hadn't just owned the land. He'd fortified it like it was the Alamo. Multiple easements, water rights, air rights, even a clause that explicitly forbids subdivision without direct family consent. He wasn't paranoid. He was prepared. The best part? He'd paid to have a private survey done 10 years ago from a firm that no longer existed, but the document still did. It included GPS coordinates, signed affidavits, and a map drawn with obsessive military precision. The HOA couldn't claim ignorance. The lines were there, in black and white. They didn't cross a border. They annexed it. I called a meeting with the HOA board. They tried to dodge, said they'd circle back and loop me in. I threatened to show up with a drone and a projector. Suddenly, I had a 9 a.m. slot on Thursday. The boardroom looked like a Pottery Barn catalog, all fake rustic charm and overpriced art prints about teamwork. Bradley Withers, the HOA's president and human equivalent of a decorative throw pillow, greeted me with a handshake that felt like wet cardboard. "We're here to collaborate," he said. I'm here to get my land back, I replied. They danced, of course. Tried to convince me it was all above board. That the development committee had interpreted the zoning differently. That perhaps I should have posted signs if I was so protective of it. That technically some of the land hadn't been in active use, and thus fell under the community's green initiative overlay. They were so smug, I almost forgot to be insulted. So just to recap, I said, leaning forward. Your HOA committee redefined legal property lines based on how useful you thought my land was, without telling me, and then built a golf course on it. Bradley cleared his throat. We believed it was in the best interest of the neighborhood. Right, I said. I've seen cults with better logic. Then came the cherry on top. They offered me $82,000 for the 5 acres. $82,000. I laughed. Right in the middle of their polished mahogany conference room, under the inspirational quote that said, "Together, we thrive." I've had used trucks worth more than that, I said. And they at least had the decency to include cup holders. They didn't appreciate the humor. Bradley went from faux friend mode to veiled threat mode in 0.2 seconds. Started hinting that if I pushed this, it could get expensive. Legal complications. Title disputes. Land value reassessments. That sort of bureaucratic blackmail. It was cute. What they didn't know was that I'd already hired a lawyer, a real one. Not one of those TV guys with the gold tie and bad veneers. This one used to work for a private development firm and had sued more municipalities than most people have credit cards. He looked at my case and said 6 words I'll never forget. These idiots paved a gold mine. Because here's the thing. Thanks to a recent infrastructure bill and some aggressive tech expansion, my region had just been rezoned for commercial vertical development. My 12 acres? It wasn't dead land anymore. It was now officially classified as Tier 1 mixed-use priority real estate. In plain terms, it could support tech campuses, green energy hubs, high-rise commercial centers, and every developer this side of the state wanted in. Especially once word got out that the HOA had illegally squatted on it with their golf fantasy. So I did what any reasonable landowner would do. I called the press. I gave interviews. I printed aerial photos. I invited reporters to take a swing at the illegal 10th hole. One local anchor whiffed so hard, she landed on the HOA's community Facebook page as a meme. Suddenly, the HOA wasn't so smug anymore. Bradley called me 3 times in 1 week. Left voicemails that got progressively more frantic. My favorite one ended with, "This isn't how we do things in Greenbrier." I texted back, "Good thing I'm not in Greenbrier." And then the lawsuit started. I filed for trespassing, unlawful development, damage to private property, and unlawful use of land. My lawyer added a few more I'd never heard of, but sounded impressive. The HOA countersued with something vague about easements. Their claim was weaker than their annual chili cook-off turnout. The battle lines were drawn. But I wasn't just going to win. I was going to sell. HOAs love control. It's their bread, butter, and gluten-free toast. So when I turned their precious golf course into a national headline and started shopping my land around to commercial developers, you could practically hear the pearl clutching from 3 counties away. They tried everything. Cease and desist letters. Emergency zoning appeals. Even a fake petition from concerned neighbors, 76 signatures, half of which were from people who didn't exist or had names like John Golfman. Subtle. Meanwhile, my lawyer, Kevin, started fielding offers. The thing about land is, it's all about timing. And thanks to a newly announced light rail line and some very public state incentives for technology corridors, my weirdly shaped patch of dirt had suddenly become the prom queen at a nerd convention. Everyone wanted to dance. By mid-June, we had serious bids. 7 figures. 8 figures. One particularly caffeinated rep from a solar conglomerate asked if I'd consider a land lease partnership. Another guy flew in by helicopter, to walk the perimeter and told me, "This is the last undeveloped sweet spot between 2 commuter hubs. It's a unicorn." I smiled and said, "Funny. The HOA thinks it's a putting green." What Greenbrier didn't realize was that they hadn't just paved over my land. They'd improved it. Their fancy cart paths, utility access, already graded. Their sprinkler systems, irrigation lines that now met city code. Their clubhouse foundation, half-finished and illegally placed? That was leverage. Bradley Withers called another emergency meeting. This time, he brought a lawyer, one of those types with $1,000 haircut and the emotional warmth of an air conditioner. They offered me $500,000 if I'd just go away. I countered with $40 million. The lawyer laughed. So did I? But one of them wasn't joking. My message was simple. They could buy the land, all 12 acres, golf course and all, but the price was going to include a very public apology, full liability for the construction violations, and a premium on every blade of grass they touched. They declined, and that's when I sold it. Not to them, obviously, but to a mid-sized real estate investment group that specialized in mixed-use developments near suburban transit corridors. They saw the HOA drama as a feature, not a bug. Free PR. A ready-made storyline. The CEO literally said to me, "We'll put your face on the brochure." Local hero turns HOA disaster into economic miracle. I asked if I could at least wear a cape. We signed papers. Cash and equity. Long-term stake. Profit sharing. Oh, and a clause that guaranteed zero involvement from any homeowners association for the next 50 years. As soon as the sale closed, they moved fast. Really fast. Survey crews showed up within 48 hours. The clubhouse was condemned. The golf course? Gone. Bulldozed back into soil. Greenbrier's precious community oasis had officially become a staging ground for what the press was already calling a tech-integrated live-work hub. That's PR speak for. Lots of buildings, lots of money. The HOA's response. Panic. Residents flooded their meetings. Some were angry, others confused. One woman, mid-rant, asked if they were still doing the Father's Day barbecue. Bradley resigned. 2 board members followed. Their legal team quietly settled, agreeing to a sum that, let's just say, would have bought them a real golf course, one not built on stolen land. And me? I made enough to never worry again. The investment group gave me a formal title, Consultant Emeritus, which is corporate code for, he beat the system, now we pay him not to torch it again. Sometimes I drive by the site. Where the 10th hole used to be, there's now a glass building with solar panels and a coffee bar inside the lobby. I walked in once. The barista had no idea she was standing on what used to be my grandfather's tomato patch. I didn't tell her, but I smiled the whole way home. You ever see a bureaucracy realize it's bleeding money in real time? That's what Greenbrier Summit looked like the month after I sold the land. Their HOA financials, which up until then had resembled a smugly balanced spreadsheet with lots of pastel pie charts, suddenly flipped red. Deep red. The kind of red that makes accountants weep and lawyers blink 3 extra times before responding. Why? Because that half-finished golf course they were so proud of? Yeah. Turns out they'd pre-spent millions of HOA funds developing it, on the assumption the land would inevitably be theirs. Loans. Infrastructure. Contractors. A granite fountain that literally never worked. All built on a patch of earth they didn't legally own. And now they had to dismantle it. With penalties. The residents weren't thrilled, as you might imagine. HOAs are usually united in their desire to control mailbox colors and outlaw trampoline visibility. But take away their amenities and hit them with a surprise special assessment? Suddenly, Brenda from Lot 42 is ready to storm the gates with a pitchfork. The fallout was immediate. The board president, formerly Bradley Withers, now known locally as that moron who lost the land, became the human equivalent of a burnt casserole. First, he resigned for personal reasons. Then, photos leaked of him trying to convince a county inspector that maybe the clubhouse should be classified as portable storage. Spoiler, it wasn't. Worse still, word got around that several members of the HOA board had known weeks in advance that the property wasn't legally theirs. But they went ahead anyway, banking on the fact that I'd be too broke or too slow to stop them. Oops. The residents turned on each other fast. Emergency meetings were held in garages, on Zoom, in coffee shops. People who'd never spoken beyond passive-aggressive nods at the mailbox were now forming alliances like it was a suburban Game of Thrones. Meanwhile, I was sipping espresso with the development firm's CEO on the patio of what used to be their driving range. The first building had gone up in record time. A sleek, glass and timber flex space marketed toward eco-innovators and remote-first professionals, which is developer speak for tech people with money. The site already had pre-leased tenants and an anchor cafe. A sign on the corner read, "Future home of the Junction, where green space meets smart growth." Cute. I didn't pick the name, but I didn't hate it either. One of the funniest moments came when Greenbrier tried to block construction via lawsuit, claiming the build violated community character. Community character? I attached a photo of their illegal clubhouse being torn down by a crane as Exhibit A. The judge dismissed the case before lunch. Turns out, community character means a lot less when your HOA is flat broke and in breach of 4 separate land use ordinances. Even their law firm started quietly backing away. Last I checked, they were being sued by 3 contractors for non-payment. And the final blow? That came when the county, now fully looped in on the scandal, did a little housekeeping of their own. They reviewed all recent Greenbrier Summit developments. Turns out, this golf course land grab wasn't their first shady move, just the dumbest one. Zoning violations. Unpermitted drainage reroutes. A park trail that conveniently cut through protected wetlands. Oh, and the time they accidentally removed an easement marker from a neighbor's driveway. I didn't even have to press. The county did it for me. HOA board dissolved. Financial oversight committee installed. Temporary outside management brought in. And that granite fountain? Removed. Apparently, it violated seismic safety codes and had been leaking into a nearby retention basin. Can't make this stuff up. And me? I was invited to speak at a regional smart zoning symposium as a citizen advocate who successfully reclaimed illegally annexed property. The intro was a little over the top. Land justice warrior was a stretch, but I admit it felt good seeing the slideshow. A satellite image of my land before, during, and after the HOA disaster, followed by a gleaming render of the final campus plans. I ended the talk with this. They built a golf course on my land without asking. So I turned it into $1 billion development without asking them back. The applause was louder than a sprinkler system at 3 a.m. 6 months later, the junction was halfway finished. What used to be an illegally poured golf cart path was now a pedestrian greenway with smart lighting and charging stations. The 10th hole, replaced by a co-working hub with floor-to-ceiling windows and a rooftop apiary. Somehow, my grandfather's land, once just a quiet patch of overlooked earth, had become a beacon of next-gen development. And the best part? It was still in my name. Technically, I didn't sell the land outright. I sold a long-term development lease with equity and retention clauses. Translation: every square foot that gets leased or built still sends a check to my mailbox. The developers love calling me partner. I just call it poetic justice. Greenbrier Summit, meanwhile, was busy rebranding. Literally. They dropped Summit, too aspirational, apparently, and changed their name to Greenbrier Enclave, which sounds more like a retirement bunker than a community. Their new board issued a public statement that made zero reference to the land scandal. Just a vague promise to focus on neighborliness and forward-facing values. No apology. No acknowledgement. But then again, they didn't need to say it. Because the HOA was gutted. Membership plummeted. Rules were slashed. Fees were capped. And most notably, they issued a refund for the illegal golf course expenditures. Sure, it wasn't much, a couple $100 per resident, but it came with a formal admission of oversight, which in HOA language is the closest thing to "we screwed up royally." I heard Bradley moved to another state. Still trying to run HOAs, last I checked. I imagine somewhere, someone's being fined for a garden gnome violation while he smirks behind mirrored sunglasses. But I wasn't thinking about him anymore. Because something bigger had started happening. Other landowners started calling me. Not just local, people from other states. Folks who'd had easements twisted, fences moved, or land incorporated into a HOA greenbelt without consent. One guy in Texas said, "I read your story, and for the first time, I thought, hell, maybe I don't have to take this." That hit me harder than any payout. So I did something I never expected. I started a small legal aid fund, Last Honest Acre, named after what my grandfather always called the land. It's not flashy, just a nonprofit that connects landowners with legal counsel when HOA overreach starts turning into outright theft. The homepage tagline: they don't get to redraw the map just because they own a clipboard. Yeah, that line felt right. I still visit the property from time to time, sometimes to meet investors, sometimes just to walk it. There's a bench near the south entrance where my grandfather used to sit, staring out past the creek and muttering about suit-wearing termites. We restored it, put a plaque on it, for the man who said no. The day the final construction phase kicked off, I stood on the roof of the new tech building, the one that now casts a long, gleaming shadow over Greenbrier's eastern cul-de-sac. It was breezy, quiet, almost poetic. Someone from the development team came up behind me and said, "Did you ever imagine this?" I laughed. I imagined peace and quiet, and maybe a shed with working plumbing. He nodded, then added, "You know, if HOAs try this again somewhere else, they'll think twice now." I didn't say anything. I just watched a golf ball, cracked and sun-faded, roll out of the construction rubble and into a pile of gravel, probably from the 9th hole. I left it there, a relic of arrogance, a monument to miscalculation, a trophy in its own way. Because if Greenbrier's clipboard brigade ever tries something like this again, well, let's just say I've got a course of my own now, and I don't play by their rules. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.